First Contact Protocol. The Galactic Assembly Station hung like a crystalline snowflake against the void, its delicate spires stretching for kilometers in every direction. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching the reaction of the assembled diplomatic corps as humanity made its entrance. The massive form of the EDS Vigilant emerged from hyperspace, its 30-kilometer length casting a shadow across the station's gossamer towers. "By the first light," whispered Saltor, the Ardrani representative, his luminescent tendrils flickering with alarm. "What manner of vessel is this?" Sarah maintained her diplomatic composure, though she couldn't help but feel a hint of pride. The Vigilant was humanity's newest defensive platform, a testament to the lessons learned during the Sol System wars. "That would be our diplomatic escort," she said simply. The assembled aliens, representatives of civilizations thousands of years older than humanity's space age, stared in collective shock. Their own ships, elegant constructions of living crystal and bioengineered tissue, seemed like delicate insects next to Earth's behemoth. Diplomatic, escort. The word seemed to catch in Salter's translation matrix. "That vessel carries enough energy signatures to power a small star." "We believe in being prepared," Sarah replied, smoothing her ceremonial uniform. "Earth learned long ago that peace is best maintained through readiness." The Vigilant's escort ships emerged next, mere 5-kilometer vessels that still dwarfed the largest assembly ships. They took up defensive positions with precision that belied their size, their quantum arrays scanning for threats that the assembly races had long since forgotten about. First Speaker Ixel, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate crystalline shell, floated forward. "Ambassador Chen, while we welcome Earth to the assembly, we must express concern. Such vessels violate numerous assembly protocols regarding militarization of diplomatic missions." Sarah had been prepared for this. She opened her datapad, displaying historical records. "With respect, First Speaker, Earth studied the assembly protocols thoroughly. There are no specific size limitations on diplomatic escorts, only restrictions on weapon types and yield. The Vigilant carries no prohibited weapons. Because your species has weaponized technologies we never considered using for war," interrupted Delegate Cathol, their chitin plates clicking with agitation. "Those gravitic generators alone could tear a planet apart." "They could also stop a planet from being torn apart," Sarah countered. "The Vigilant's primary function is defense and disaster response. Did you know it can extend a stabilization field large enough to prevent a solar flare from hitting a populated world, or generate a temporary atmosphere around a dying colony?" The delegates murmured among themselves. Sarah continued, "Earth builds big because we learned our lessons about building too small. When the spiral arm incident nearly wiped out our colonies, we swore, never again. Every ship in our fleet is designed first and foremost to protect life. And yet you arm them like warriors," Ixel observed. "We arm them like guardians," Sarah corrected. "There's a difference. A warrior seeks conflict. A guardian prepares for it while hoping they never need to prove their readiness." The station's sensors pinged as the Vigilant completed its defensive scan. Captain Maya Rodriguez's hologram appeared beside Sarah. "Station security perimeter established. Ambassador, we're detecting some unusual quantum fluctuations in the nearby sector, but nothing immediate to worry about." Several assembly delegates shifted uncomfortably. Their species had evolved past the need for such constant vigilance, or so they believed. Sarah knew better. Humanity had seen too much, learned too much, to ever fully lower their guard. "Perhaps," First Speaker Ixel said slowly, "we should proceed with the integration ceremonies. Your guardians may maintain their position, though we hope Earth will come to understand that such precautions are unnecessary in assembly space." Sarah bowed respectfully, even as her quantum implant registered another alert from the Vigilant sensors. Something was stirring in the dark between stars, something the assembly had forgotten about long ago. Humanity hadn't come to the assembly seeking conflict, but they'd learned the hard way that peace wasn't merely the absence of war. It was the presence of those willing to stand against the dark. "We look forward to proving ourselves valuable members of the Assembly," Sarah said diplomatically. She didn't add, "and you'll thank us soon enough." She didn't have to. The vigilant shadow stretched across the station, not as a threat, but as a promise. Humanity had come to join the galactic community, and they'd brought their shields with them. The Assembly would understand soon enough why those shields needed to be so large. In the darkness between stars, something ancient stirred, and only Earth's sensors noticed. The Guardian Fleet. Admiral James Cowrie wasn't surprised when the emergency assembly session was called. 3 months after Earth's admission to the galactic community, the Vigilant had proven its worth in ways that made the elder races deeply uncomfortable. 4 natural disasters averted, he read from the holographic report hovering before the assembly chamber. 6 pirate fleets neutralized without casualties. 1 potential colony-killing asteroid deflected. And most recently, the evacuation of 12 million Ardrani citizens from their failing orbital habitats. He looked up at the gathered representatives. All because we overbuilt our ships. The assembly chamber, a vast amphitheater of living crystal, hummed with uneasy energy. The Ardrani delegation, in particular, shifted in their gravity couches, their luminescent tendrils pulsing with conflicting emotions. They owed Earth a debt, but that debt made them uncomfortable. First Speaker Ixel's crystalline form glowed with careful diplomatic light. "No one questions the effectiveness of Earth's vessels, Admiral. We question the necessity. The Assembly has maintained peace for millennia without such extensive preparations. Have you?" The Admiral's voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the chamber. "Or have you simply forgotten what it means to be truly challenged?" He gestured, and a new hologram filled the chamber. "These are readings from the Vigilant's deep space sensors. Quantum disturbances that match no known natural phenomenon. Gravity waves that suggest something massive moving through subspace. And most concerning, echoes of signals that our archaeologists found in the ruins of dead civilizations." The chamber erupted in protest. "Impossible," called out Delegate Cathol. "The Great Devourers are a myth, a story to frighten children. Like the pirates that nearly destroyed the Ardrani habitats were myths." James countered. "Like the solar flare that would have sterilized the Proxima colonies was a myth. Humanity builds big ships because we've learned that the universe is filled with big threats." He paced the speaking platform, his ceremonial uniform gleaming under the crystal lights. "When we first reached the stars, we built small ships too. Elegant vessels that could have fit in with your fleets. Then came the Spiral Arm incident. We lost 30 million people because our ships were too small to evacuate them in time. Too weak to fight back against what hit us." The chamber grew quiet. Earth's tragic entry into galactic civilization was well documented, though few understood its full impact on human psychology. "We rebuilt," James continued. "We built ships that could save worlds. Ships that could stand against any threat. You call them behemoths. We call them lifeboats." First Speaker Ixel floated forward. "And yet you arm these lifeboats with weapons that could shatter planets. Because sometimes saving lives means fighting for them." James activated another hologram, showing the Vigilant's internal layout. 90% of our ship's mass is dedicated to defensive systems, medical facilities, and evacuation spaces. We carry enough supplies to support 10 billion refugees. The weapons are there because we learned that not every threat can be negotiated with." The assembly representatives murmured among themselves. The Admiral's words struck at deep-buried memories, stories passed down through generations about darker times, about threats their ancestors had faced before the long peace. "There's something else," James said quietly. "Something we haven't shared until now." He hesitated, then activated his final hologram. 3 days ago, the Vigilant detected this. The image showed a massive shape moving through the darkness between stars. Ancient, hungry, familiar to races that had tried to forget their nightmares. "Impossible," someone whispered. But there it was, proof that the universe hadn't grown safer. The assembly had simply grown more complacent. "This is why we build big ships," James said into the shocked silence. "This is why we arm our lifeboats. Because humanity learned early that peace isn't a natural state of the universe. Peace is something you must guard, something you must fight for." He looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes and sensory organs. "Earth didn't join the assembly to disrupt your peace. We joined to help preserve it. The question isn't why our ships are so big. The question is, are they big enough for what's coming?" In the silence that followed, the vigilant sensors continued their endless watch. In the darkness between stars, ancient signals grew stronger. Humanity had built their guardian fleet just in time. Soon, the assembly would understand why. The peace they had taken for granted was about to be tested. But this time, they wouldn't face the darkness alone. The swarm awakens. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood motionless on the Vigilance command deck as the unthinkable unfolded before her. The quantum disturbance they'd been tracking for months had finally revealed its true nature, and the reality was worse than their darkest predictions. "Multiple contacts," announced Lieutenant Sarah Way from the sensor station, reading over 3,000 entities emerging from subspace. Biomechanical signatures matched the artifacts we found in the dead systems. The Great Devourers were no longer a myth. The massive swarm of ancient vessels stretched across the viewport, each one a twisted amalgamation of organic and mechanical components. They made the assembly's elegant ships look like toys, and Earth's massive vessels suddenly seemed appropriately sized. "Status of the evacuation?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Assembly worlds in the projected path are being cleared," Commander David Chen reported. "The Vigilance refugee bays are at 40% capacity. The rest of the Guardian fleet is moving to support evacuation efforts in other sectors." Maya nodded, watching as the swarm approached. The assembly had initially resisted the evacuation order, calling it an overreaction. That resistance had crumbled when the first outer colony went dark. "Signal from the Assembly Emergency Council," Lieutenant Way announced. "They're requesting our protection." The irony wasn't lost on anyone on the bridge. After months of questioning Earth's oversized vessels, the elder races were now counting on those same ships to save them. "Tell them protection is already en route," Maya ordered. "And get me a direct line to Admiral Kari. The Vigilant may be big, but we're going to need the entire Guardian fleet for this." The next few hours were a blur of coordinated chaos. The Vigilant's massive holds filled with refugees as smaller assembly ships darted back and forth, bringing survivors from the outer colonies. Each vessel that docked carried stories of horror, ancient machines that consumed entire worlds, breaking them down for resources and biomass. "Just like the archaeological records warned," David muttered, reviewing the incoming data. "The Great Devourers don't just destroy civilizations, they consume them. Technology, biology, knowledge. Everything gets absorbed and repurposed." Maya studied the tactical display, where red dots representing the swarm slowly advanced through assembly space. The Guardian fleet's positions were marked in blue, massive ships that finally had a chance to demonstrate their true purpose. "Signal from the first speaker," Lieutenant Way announced. "They're requesting permission to come aboard." Minutes later, Maya stood face to face with first speaker Ixel in the Vigilance main conference room. The crystalline being's glow had dimmed considerably, a sign of deep distress. "We should have heeded your warnings," Ixel admitted. "Our long peace made us forget why our ancestors built weapons in the first place." "Peace isn't guaranteed," Maya replied. "It must be guarded. That's why we call these ships the Guardian Fleet." The tactical display updated, showing more red dots emerging from subspace. The swarm was growing, but so was humanity's response. More Earth ships were arriving hourly, their massive forms taking up defensive positions around populated systems. "We've analyzed their attack patterns," Maya explained, bringing up detailed scans. "The swarm is adaptive, learning from each encounter. But so are we. Every Earth ship carries quantum computers dedicated to analyzing their tactics and developing countermeasures. Your vessel's size suddenly seems far more reasonable, Ixel observed. Each one is not merely a ship, but a mobile fortress, a sanctuary, and a laboratory, and a hospital, and yes, when necessary, a weapons platform, Maya added. Because true peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of guardians ready to face that conflict so others don't have to. The Vigilance engines hummed as it moved into position. Behind it, a wall of Earth ships formed a defensive line between the swarm and the most populated assembly worlds. Ships that had been criticized as oversized were now the only things standing between civilization and consumption. All stations, battle stations, Maya ordered, begin charging primary defensive arrays, launch rescue shuttles to continue evacuation operations, and send word to the assembly. Tell them to get their people to safety. The Guardian fleet will hold the line. As klaxons sounded throughout the ship, Maya caught First Speaker Ixel's glow shifting to a color she'd never seen before. What does that color mean? She asked. Hope, Ixel replied simply. We had forgotten what it felt like to be truly protected. The swarm approached, ancient and hungry, but humanity had built their ships for exactly this moment. The peace of the assembly wouldn't end on their watch. The battle for civilization was about to begin, and the Guardian fleet was ready. Unity through adversity. The battle that would decide the fate of the assembly began not with a bang, but with silence. The quantum shields of Earth's Guardian fleet absorbed the first wave of Devourer attacks without a sound, their massive energy arrays drinking in power that would have shattered smaller vessels. Admiral James Cowrie watched from the EDS Vigilance Strategic Command Center as the defensive line held. All ships, maintain position, he ordered. Remember your training. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. The Devourer's biomechanical ships writhed in space, their ancient forms bristling with weapons that had consumed countless civilizations, but they had never encountered anything like Earth's Guardian fleet. Humanity had built their ships with this exact scenario in mind, even when they didn't know what form the threat would take. Sir, Captain Maya Rodriguez reported, assembly vessels are taking up support positions behind our lines. They're offering their advanced sensor networks and quantum mapping capabilities. James smiled grimly. Finally, cooperation born of necessity. The assembly's elegant ships might lack raw power, but their sophisticated technology could enhance the Guardian fleet's capabilities. Patch them into our tactical network, he ordered. Let's show these ancient horrors what happens when the old and new work together. The battle unfolded across 3 dimensions of space and 7 dimensions of quantum reality. The Devourers attacked with weapons that bent physics, but Earth's massive ships had been built to bend it back. Each vessel was a self-contained fortress, carrying enough power to reignite a dying sun. Multiple breaches detected in Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Wei. The swarm is adapting to our shield frequencies. They always do, James muttered. This was why Earth built redundancy upon redundancy into their ships. Activate secondary defensive arrays. Begin rotating shield harmonics according to pattern delta. The assembly representatives watched in awe from their command posts as Earth's vessels demonstrated their full capabilities. Ships that had been criticized as oversized now used every cubic meter of their massive volumes, their layered defenses absorbing attacks that would have annihilated smaller craft. Fascinating, First Speaker Ixel observed, their crystalline form pulsing with analysis patterns. Your vessel's size isn't about intimidation. It's about survival. Survival and protection, James corrected. Watch this. All Guardian vessels execute Protocol Aegis. The massive Earth ships began to move in perfect synchronization, their quantum fields overlapping. The assembly sensor networks provided precise targeting data, allowing the Guardian fleet to coordinate with unprecedented accuracy. In the space between the ships, reality itself seemed to twist. By the first light, Ixel whispered, "You're creating a quantum barrier." Something we learned from studying ancient defensive systems, James explained. But we could never generate a field large enough until we combined our power with your sensing technology. The Devourers slammed against the barrier, their biomechanical forms recoiling from energies they couldn't consume. For the first time in their ancient history, they faced a force they couldn't simply absorb and repurpose. They're pulling back, Maya reported. Swarm cohesion is breaking down. Whatever they are, they've never failed to consume their prey before. They don't know how to handle resistance on this scale. The assembly sensor networks tracked the swarm's confusion, feeding tactical data to the Guardian fleet. Earth's massive ships pressed their advantage, their combined quantum fields creating a wall of pure physics that the ancient horrors couldn't breach. All vessels, prepare for synchronized offensive, James ordered. Assembly ships, maintain sensor lock. Together, we end this today. The Guardian fleet moved as one, their massive forms orchestrating a dance of power that turned space itself into a weapon. The Devourers, for the first time in their ancient existence, began to retreat. We're detecting quantum fluctuations in their core vessels, Ixal reported, their crystalline form blazing with excitement. Your attack patterns, combined with our sensor data, we're not just defeating them. We're making them question their own existence. James watched as the swarm's cohesion continued to deteriorate. That's the thing about bullies, whether they're schoolyard or cosmic. Stand up to them with enough force, and they crumble. The battle wasn't over, but its turning point had been reached. The Assembly's advanced technology combined with Earth's raw power had created something new, a defensive force that could stand against any threat. Send word to all Assembly worlds, James ordered. The Guardian fleet stands firm, and we don't stand alone anymore. In the quantum silence that followed the retreat of the ancient swarm, a new understanding was born. The Assembly had needed Earth's strength, and Earth had needed the Assembly's wisdom. Together, they had achieved what neither could have managed alone. The peace of the galaxy had been challenged, but its guardians had risen to meet that challenge, and they had emerged stronger for it. Dawn of the Alliance. The Great Hall of the Assembly Station had been rebuilt after the war, its crystalline architecture now reinforced with Earth's defensive technologies. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the podium, looking out over the gathered representatives of both the Assembly races and humanity. The scene was far different from her first appearance here a year ago. The Devourer threat has been contained, she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. The last swarm fragments were defeated yesterday by the combined forces of the Guardian fleet and Assembly reconnaissance vessels. The chamber erupted in harmonious celebration, a blend of human cheers, crystalline chimes, and various alien expressions of joy. Above them, through the transparent ceiling, the massive form of the EDS Vigilant kept its eternal watch, no longer a source of concern but of comfort. But our victory brings us to a crossroads, Sarah continued once the celebration quieted. We must decide. Do we return to our separate ways, or do we forge something new? First Speaker Ixal floated forward, their crystalline form glowing with the complex patterns that indicated deep thought. The Assembly has existed for millennia. They began, guided by principles of minimal intervention and passive defense. Recent events have proven the flaws in this approach. The gathered representatives stirred. Such an admission from the first speaker was unprecedented. Humanity's Guardian fleet saved our civilization, Ixal continued, not through aggression, but through preparation and protection. We once criticized their vessels as oversized and overpowered. Now we understand. True peace requires true guardians. Admiral Cowrie stepped forward, his uniform bearing both Earth insignia and newly added Assembly honors. Earth didn't build its fleet to dominate, he said, but to defend. We learned our lessons about being unprepared. Now we offer to share not just our protection, but our knowledge. The holograms activated, showing designs that made even the most seasoned Assembly engineers pulse with excitement. New vessels that combined Earth's defensive capabilities with Assembly biotechnology, training programs to create joint crews. a unified defensive network that would span the galaxy. "We propose the formation of the Galactic Guardian Corps," Sarah announced, "a joint force dedicated to protecting all sapient life, combining Earth's defensive doctrine with assembly wisdom. Not to wage war, but to preserve peace." The chamber filled with discussion as representatives debated the proposal, but there was little real opposition. The Devourer attack had changed everything. The Assembly had seen the value of Earth's preparation, while humanity had learned the benefits of the Assembly's advanced technology. "The Vigilant will serve as our first training vessel," Admiral Cowrie explained. "We're already refitting it with Assembly bio-quantum systems. The ship that some once called a behemoth of war will become a school of peace." First Speaker Ixel's glow shifted to the rare color that humans had learned meant profound approval. Perhaps this was always meant to be. The Assembly had grown complacent in its peace, while Earth had perhaps focused too much on preparation for war. "Together, we find the balance." Sarah nodded. "A shield is neither a weapon nor a weakness. It is a tool of protection, most effective when held with both wisdom and strength." The vote was nearly unanimous. As the Assembly chamber erupted in celebration once again, Sarah watched the streams of shuttles heading toward the Vigilant. Assembly technicians eager to integrate their biotechnology with Earth's defensive systems. Human engineers ready to learn the quantum secrets of the elder races. Two approaches to civilization, finally working in harmony. "The Devourers taught us something important," Admiral Cowrie said quietly, standing beside her at the viewport. "The galaxy isn't divided into warriors and pacifists. It's divided into those who protect and those who destroy. We chose to protect." Above them, the Vigilant's massive form caught the light of distant stars. Once seen as a symbol of humanity's overwhelming preparation, it now represented something new. The unity of wisdom and strength, of protection and progress. The peace that followed would be different from the Assembly's old tranquility. It would be an active peace, guarded by massive ships, and maintained by joint crews who understood that true security came from both the readiness to defend and the wisdom to know when force wasn't needed. The Age of Guardians had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.